Hi, welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing the mid-year reading check-in book tag. That's a lot of words. This tag is a revamp of the mid-year freakout tag that Jessie the Reader uploaded this year, I think for the first time. So I was planning to do the mid-year freakout book tag, but we're giving this one a go because I've done the other one before and I thought we'd try something new. So let's get straight into it. The first question is, what is the best book you've read so far this year? And I was going back and forth. I couldn't settle on one, so I'm going to show you three, or two kind of. But the first one is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was incredible. It's super hyped and it deserves every bit of that hype. It was an immediate 5 stars for me, and that very rarely happens, but if you haven't read this book because you think it's overhyped, I promise you it is as good as everyone says. The other books that I'm currently considering the best things I've read this year are Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I can't believe I read these for the first time this year. I can't believe they were on my TBR for so long and I didn't read them. If you know me, you know this series has kind of taken over my life. I think about them every day. I think about them all the time. These books are incredible. They are probably my favorite thing I've read all year. The next question is, what is your most disappointing read of the year? And I feel bad answering this question because for me it's all based on timing. I know that if I read this book at a different time, I would have felt differently about it. But I read it directly after I finished The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, so I think that kind of influenced my feelings. But it is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. I thought I would absolutely love this book, and I liked it. It was fine, but I really thought it would be one of those books that just captures me and that I would just love, but I didn't. It was recommended to me by a friend who shares similar tastes, and so I really thought it would be perfect, and it had so many of my favorite tropes, but it just didn't land, so I do think it was a timing thing. The next question is, what is the best book recommendation you've got all year? And I think it has to be Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. I was recommended this book by 2 of my friends and they absolutely hit the nail on the head. This is exactly the kind of book I would love, and I did absolutely love it. I mean, what is there not to love about this book? I'm not going to talk about it too much because I think it's best if you go in not knowing too much. I think the very premise kind of spoils a lot of the story, but it's wonderful. I loved it so much. Like, there are books that I've read this year that maybe I liked more than this, but in terms of a recommendation, this was just so perfectly everything I enjoy. So yes. Next up is, what was your first DNF of the year? Now, I sometimes DNF books like constantly, and other times I refuse to DNF. This year there are 2 books that come to mind that I did not finish. The first one was a reread of Catching Fire, just because I got caught up in other things and didn't want to spend my time rereading a book, but I will probably finish that at some point. The other book that I did not finish that I don't think I'm going to go back to is Spare by Prince Harry. I started reading it a little late into the hype, and then by the time I was trying to get into it, the hype died down and no one really cared anymore, and I just didn't have the energy for it, so I quit. But yeah, I would like to one day read it. I think he's probably got some interesting things to say, but I watched a bunch of people talking about it, so I feel like I know the important bits. But yeah. The next question is a new release from this year that you've read and your thoughts about it, good or bad. And for me, that is Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. This is the last book in the Last Hours series, and I do have thoughts. If you'd like to see my reading experience, I did vlog that, so it'll be linked below. But I think my thoughts on this book have kind of shifted over the months that have passed since I read it. I spent my birthday reading this, actually. It came out the day before, and so I really liked this book as I read it. I had a good time. I was enjoying myself. After I finished it, as I generally do, I went online to see what everyone else thought, and a lot of people were underwhelmed. And that got me thinking and like actually questioning the book. I do think a lot of people are right in saying that it was an underwhelming ending. I think Cassandra Clare usually ends her series on a bit more of a banger. This one felt a bit slow, maybe. I think the problem is that it was very character driven, as a lot of her stories are, but the plot felt kind of non-existent to me. but I am a character-driven kind of person, so I was all for this and like just following these people around in their lives. I honestly would have enjoyed this book if there was no plot and we were just watching these people try and be friends and get into relationships, because the characters in this book are really compelling, so yeah. Also, I will never get over the alternate cover. Like, that is so beautiful. I love it. Next up is a book that came out in the first half of the year that you want to read, and a book that's coming out in the second half of the year that you want to read. So for that first one, we have Imogen Obviously by Becky Albertalli. This sounds like something I'm going to enjoy. I think especially if this came out a few years ago, I would have like eaten it up immediately. But I do still think I'm going to enjoy it. I've loved the other books by Becky Albertalli that I've read in the past and think this is going to be good. As for a book that's not out yet that I'm anticipating, I've got to say Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. It's the first thing she's released recently that's not a part of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what it's like. I honestly don't know much about it. I just know it's by Cassandra Clare. I think it's an adult fantasy. But other than that, no idea. The cover looks cool though, so that's good. Also, volume 5 of Heartstopper is coming out later this year, but I didn't add it to the official list because I have already read that because I follow like the webcomic, so yeah. Next up is a beautiful book you've added to your collection or a beautiful book you would like to add to your collection. I have a few for this. I love beautiful books. First up is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This is so beautiful. I don't think a camera will ever do it justice. As a physical object, this is wonderful. I have not read this book. I do not really even know what it's about. I did buy it because it's pretty. So, earlier this year, a friend gifted me this insanely beautiful copy of Chain of Gold. This might be the most beautiful book I own. It's incredible. It's got Cortana and like it is slightly metallic, like it reflective almost, but I don't think a camera would pick that up very well. It's beautiful. It's got gold edges. It's just an incredible physical object. Also, this like beautiful green end paper. Ooh, I love it. Yes, this is really pretty. In terms of pretty books that I want to own, there are two that I've had my eye on. I was going to buy them and then I didn't, and then I kind of was really upset that I didn't, but they are widely available, so one day. But that is the collector's edition of Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. They're beautiful. I love those books. I would like them, please. The next question is, what genre have you read from the most this year? And without a doubt, fantasy. I track my reading on a spread list and have a chart for my genres. More than half of it is fantasy. I do think I use the term fantasy maybe a bit lightly. If anything's kind of like magical realism or like very low fantasy, I do still count it as fantasy, and then I kind of have a sub-genre category. But I like to have kind of these broader ideas of what I'm reading. But fantasy is definitely what I'm reading the most of this year. I think it's because of the Cassandra Clare books that I've been reading and Leigh Bardugo. I've been reading a lot of those. So that's made up a lot of my reading, and so loads of fantasy. The next question is, do you feel like your reading tastes have changed or shifted this year? A new genre you love, a new favourite trope, or a new favourite theme? And I definitely think mine have. Not totally, I mean, I'm still keeping to the core of what I've always read, but I'm reading a lot more new adult and adult rather than young adult, which I think is just like natural as I am aging. The stories I'm interested in are aging as well. I do still love a good bit of young adult though. In terms of favourite tropes, I feel like those have kind of stayed the same my whole life, but I'm really, really loving found family as always. I love found family. There is something so like magical about it, about finding people who choose each other and stay with each other. I love it. I've also been really loving like idiots in love. I don't know if that's necessarily the trope I'm talking about, but like people who very clearly love each other and just are dumb about it. Where did the sun just go? I think I just really enjoy romance that's not necessarily like easy for anyone involved. It's kind of miscommunication or lack of communication, not in a bad way though, it's just like neither think it's gonna happen so no one says anything, which I love. Maybe that says something about me, but we're not going to read too far into it, alright? Don't read into it, just don't. In terms of the themes I've been interested in, I basically think it all revolves around Red, White and Royal Blue. I've been absolutely loving that book since 2019. I've read it over 60 times. I have a problem, but with the movie coming out, all I can think about is Red, White and Royal Blue, and I just finished rereading it actually, and I think the themes of that book really sum up what I'm interested in right now. Things like legacy and identity are things that I've always been really interested in, but that book just does it so right. And I think those things can be found in a lot of the books that I read. But yeah, don't get me started on Red, White and Royal Blue right now. I can't do that. The next question is, did you set any reading goals this year? And if you did, how's it going? My goal this year, and basically every year, was to read 50 books. And up until very recently, I was very far behind. There were a few months where I read like 2 books a month and just fell really behind. But I'm rereading the Heartstopper graphic novels at the moment because season 2 is coming out of the show. And that is definitely helping me catch up on my goal. I am only like 1 or 2 books behind right now, and I think I could catch up, maybe, if I tried. But yeah, I did also set a goal to not reread as much this year, and for the first bit of the year I was doing really well in that. I barely reread anything, but for the past 4 months maybe, I've basically only been rereading, because I've been having a rough time and I like my comfort books, so that's what I've been doing. The next question is, what book format have you been gravitating to recently? And I would never have thought to ask that, but it's such an interesting question. This year I think I've been listening to a lot more audiobooks than usual. I think because I've been doing so much rereading, I do like to listen to those as audiobooks. Generally I'll listen to them like in bed to fall asleep, but I've also just been not able to focus, just to like sit still and read. So I've been putting audiobooks on while I cook or clean or knit, or just like stare really intensely at a wall until my family sees me and thinks something's wrong with me. But yeah, the last question is a book you've read this year that embodies the vibe of your reading for the year. And this one to me there is a clear standout, a clear winner, and that, of course, is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I, again, have read this book more times than I should have. I love it with my whole heart. It's all I think about, but I think it really captures my reading mood lately. First of all, it's a reread. I've been doing so much rereading lately. It is queer and fun, and what's better than that? But also, while I read it, I have to put it down and throw it across the room and scream into my pillow. And isn't that what reading's all about? It has so many of the tropes that I love and the themes that I love, and it's just wonderful. I actually bought this copy specifically to kind of be rough with. I wanted to annotate it, I wanted to be able to read it without worrying about breaking the spine, and I've got to say, I've gotten the best use out of this thing. I was talking to my best friend for 10 hours about this book and the movie that's coming, and I was like tearing it open and like flicking around looking for quotes and looking for like themes. It was so much fun, and I just love this book. I could talk about this book forever, and I really should just do like a book review for it, but I feel like I can't gather my thoughts like well enough to talk about. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can give it a thumbs up. What have you been reading this year? Let me know your favorite book of the year and whether or not I should read it, because turns out I'm really bad at finding new books, despite my very large TBR. Don't look at it. This is not my TBR, but it's over there. Don't look at it. But yes, you can subscribe. I upload twice a week, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi, welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing the mid-year check-in reading Mid-year reading check-in. Mid-year reading check-in. That's a loud plane. But, everyone be quiet. Why are the birds so loud? Is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. That is such a tongue twister. By Heather, which is such an interesting question and not one I would have thought to ask. And there is another plane. Can you hear that crow? What book format have you been gravitating to recently? Oh my god. A book you've read this year that embodies your blah 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 blah.